Picture this. The U.S. economy, after years of boasting about being great, now on the brink of collapse. The EU and Canada aren't just sitting back. They're gearing up for a powerful counterattack. And guess who's going to foot the bill? Yep, that's right. American consumers. This isn't some joke. It's happening. And let me tell you, it's only going to get worse from here. We are ready for a deal. At the same time, we are preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. This is why we consulted on a rebalancing list, and we will defend the European interest as needed. In short, all options remain on the table. Back in 2018, the trade war started by Trump felt like a horror movie no one could predict. With his America First slogan, Trump broke international trade agreements, slapped tariffs on goods from partner countries, and isolated the U.S. economy. It sounded strong, but the details of this policy are costing America dearly. Trump's decision to impose tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other critical goods wasn't just a slap to trading partners. It was a heavy blow to the U.S. economy itself. While Trump thought countries like the EU and Canada would bow down easily, the reality proved otherwise. As the deadline approaches, Trump's dream of forcing the world to kneel is collapsing like a sandcastle in a storm. As the 9th of July draws near, things aren't going according to Trump's plan. Contrary to what he imagined, European leaders began preparing for a long war, not just backing down like Trump hoped. And if you think the EU was just going to sit back, well, think again. France, especially President Macron, has taken a strong stance, declaring they won't accept any unfair deals. This means that Trump's so-called pressure is only a mistake leading to a full-blown trade war. Europe's retaliation isn't just talk. They've got a list of items they're ready to hit with tariffs. From high-tech products and Boeing aircraft to U.S. agricultural products, everything's on the table. This is the moment Europe is making it clear. Fair or not, we're renegotiating everything. While leaders like Germany and Italy might be hesitating, France has made it clear that any imbalance will be met with strong retaliation. If you think only the EU is resisting Trump, you're wrong. Canada also has a surprising way of fighting back in this trade war. Instead of confronting Trump head-on, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney built a long-term strategy, focusing on creating alliances with the EU without needing U.S. approval. This not only helped Canada mitigate the impact of U.S. tariffs, but also expanded Canada's influence in key areas like defense, industry, and technology. Carney realized that the U.S. can't be the only and forever dominant partner. And with escalating tariffs from the U.S., Canada had no choice but to seek international alliances. Rather than fighting face-to-face, Carney built strong relationships with the EU, helping Canada stand firm against Washington's pressure without needing U.S. consent. The strategic deal between Canada and the EU was signed without the fanfare of Trump's deals, but it was an incredibly smart move. It included defense cooperation, renewable energy development, and infrastructure. This deal not only minimized the impact of U.S. tariffs, but also created a solid alliance, allowing Canada to stay out of America's tariff war. Moreover, Canada didn't just work with the EU, but also with major countries like Germany, France, and Italy. These nations realized that to deal with the U.S., they needed strategic alliances, especially as Trump's trade policies became increasingly unpredictable. But this doesn't stop at negotiations. The American people are facing real costs. Who is paying for Trump's trade war? You, me, and everyone living in the U.S. You might boast about protecting manufacturing jobs, but in reality, these tariffs are driving up the cost of living without boosting manufacturing, as promised by Trump. According to a study by the University of Chicago, the trade war has increased annual costs for American households by about $1,400 while reducing consumer purchasing power. This means that while Trump may talk about protecting manufacturing jobs, the price Americans are paying is too high, especially in essential consumer sectors. American farmers have paid a steep price. While Trump boasts about the deal with China, farmers have seen massive losses as China cut back on U.S. soybean purchases. Before the trade war, China was the largest market for U.S. soybeans, with exports reaching $13 billion annually. However, after China imposed retaliatory tariffs, their soybean imports from the U.S. dropped to 16 million tons in 2018, half of what it was in 2017, causing farmers to lose more than $10 billion in revenue. While Trump boasts about his victories, farmers quietly absorb billions of dollars in losses. They may not speak out, but the impact on voters is clear. Not only are prices soaring, but the jobs that should have been saved are now vanishing. The auto industry, the very industry Trump promised to save, is also facing rising prices and job losses. According to a report from the United Auto Workers, UAW, the auto industry lost about 50,000 jobs in 2020, partly due to the rising cost of steel and aluminum after tariffs were applied. Car prices increased by 2.5% in 2019 and continue to trend upward as manufacturers face higher production costs. Trump's promise of manufacturing jobs returning is quickly turning into a failure. The promises of job creation and the revival of the auto industry are now a glaring failure, with job cuts in factories and rising car prices. But don't think the problem ends with just prices and jobs. If the EU and Canada actually implement strong retaliation measures, the US could face a full-scale trade war that would cost the economy billions of dollars. Estimates show that if the US and EU fail to reach an agreement and tariffs are fully implemented, the losses could reach up to $80 billion USD per year for the US economy. Notably, a report from Harvard University shows that the trade war could reduce the US GDP by 0.3 to 1% annually, meaning millions of jobs would be affected, especially in sectors like automobiles, technology, and agriculture. If Trump continues this strategy, we will see a prolonged trade war not only between the U.S. and its partners, but also impacting millions of jobs, production, and consumption in the economy. Automobile, steel, and agriculture industries will face heavy impacts. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, shows that if tariffs continue long-term, about 400,000 jobs could be lost in the manufacturing sector. While prices for consumer goods will soar, reducing the purchasing power of American consumers, the stock market has reacted to the uncertainty. Since Trump's tariff announcements, the Dow Jones has dropped by around 10%, with significant volatility in the stocks of large exporting companies. The uncertainty about the future is making investors nervous. The EU and Canada aren't the only ones watching. China is also in the game. In May 2025, China ramped up retaliation measures and cut soybean imports from the U.S. by 20%, causing over $5 billion USD in losses to U.S. agriculture. And if they see an opportunity, believe it or not, they will seize it immediately, ready to strike at U.S. industries, further deepening the global trade war. So, what has Trump really won from this trade war? Sure, he can brag about a few deals, but those deals are practically worthless, and the real damage is starting to show. The U.S. manufacturing sector wasn't saved. It's on the brink. Prices are rising, and jobs are disappearing. In the end, Trump may think he's the winner in this game, but it's the American people who are paying the price for these poor decisions. Hot news! Canada just kneeled before Trump and officially canceled its plan to impose a 3% digital tax on tech giants like Google, Meta, Amazon, and Netflix. Yup, the tax that was supposed to bring fairness by targeting these massive corporations, making billions while paying taxes like they're throwing pocket change. But don't worry. Thanks to Trump protecting America, Americans will now continue to pay for utilities and internet services, keeping profits flowing for big tech. Let's dive into Trump's victory and see who really comes out on top in the end. Only just a few hours ago, the Canadian Prime Minister's office issued a statement, canceling the plan to impose a 3% digital tax as of the 30th of June. This tax was designed to target the American tech giants, raking in huge profits while paying taxes like it's a charity donation. But guess what? Trump wasn't having it. He immediately froze all bilateral trade talks, shouting that this was a blatant attack on the U.S. result. Mark Carney, Canada's cool-headed prime minister, had to back down and cancel the tax, hoping to keep negotiations afloat and aiming for a new deal by the 21st of July. Sounds like a mafia script, right? Cancel the tax for us and we'll talk. Trump's media allies are out there dancing, shouting he made Canada back down. But before you start the applause, hold your horses. This win isn't doing anything for American workers trying to keep their jobs. Instead of protecting domestic production, Trump just handed a big old victory to Google, Meta, Amazon. The companies who've basically written the book on tax avoidance. So, what's really going on for the American people? Well, nothing good. They're still paying taxes, still getting hit with higher prices on imported goods thanks to retaliatory tariffs from Canada. And small businesses, they're getting crushed by big tech right here at home. Because unlike Silicon Valley's billionaires, they can't afford to hire 100 lawyers to funnel profits into Bermuda. Big win for Silicon Valley. Tough luck for the rest of us. Doesn't it hurt? While Trump proudly claims he's defending America, it's the American taxpayer who's really doing the heavy lifting, defending big tech's massive profits. Let's talk numbers. According to the Fair Tax Foundation, the Silicon Six, Amazon, Meta, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Netflix ran in $2.5 trillion in profits over the last decade. And how much did they pay in taxes? Just 18.8%. Meanwhile, the average corporate tax rate in the US is nearly 30%, and globally it's over 25%. That's right, they've avoided paying $150 to $250 billion in taxes. Taxes that could have gone toward building hospitals, schools, and infrastructure for Americans who need it most. Then Canada, trying to level the playing field, proposes a 3% digital services tax, a small chunk to reclaim some fairness, about $7.2 billion CAD. What does Trump do? He shuts it down, forces Canada to cancel it. Now big tech pays nothing in Canada, while American taxpayers are stuck footing the bill for all the infrastructure laws and utilities those corporations exploit. Big tech wins. Americans, they're still paying the price. So, do you think Canada will stay scared of Trump forever? Well, here's where it gets darkly funny. If the Biden administration or any other president takes over after Trump, Canada might just say, well, now that the pressure is off, and pass the Digital Services Tax DST immediately. Heck, they might even slap on some interest for the delay. Here's the kicker. Canada could team up with the EU, create a collective digital tax front, and make sure they're not the lone target of a U.S. retaliation. While the U.S. has just obliterated its own fair negotiation process, Trump may be celebrating today. But what he's really done is set up a ticking time bomb for tomorrow. When that explosion happens, it's not just going to be Canada that wins. Europe, Asia, anywhere tired of U.S. bullying will jump on board. And when that day comes, big tech won't be dodging taxes anymore. Who will be left to clean up the mess? That's right, the American taxpayer. An agricultural crisis is tearing apart the United States, and your loaf of bread now comes from Canada. With U.S. farm bankruptcies skyrocketing by 55% and wheat production at a 50-year low, the harsh reality is America is losing control, and Canada is stepping in to fill that gap, one loaf at a time. For generations, agriculture has been the backbone, the pride of America. The image of a resilient farmer on endless fields was once part of the American dream. In 2023, the U.S. ranked third globally in agricultural output, with $459.85 billion, of which $443.15 billion was from food. But that's the story of the past. 55%. This isn't a growth rate, but the percentage increase in U.S. family farm bankruptcies in 2024. 216 farm bankruptcies were filed in 2024, a 55% jump from 2023, marking the end of 4 consecutive years of decline. But the more alarming number is 82 bankruptcies in the first 3 months of 2025, almost double the same period last year. This means that nearly every day in Q12 2025, a U.S. farm declared bankruptcy. The The root cause comes from multiple factors. Many American farmers need to supplement potassium in their soil, so they use potash, most of which is sourced from Saskatchewan, Canada. Conversely, Canadian farmers often need to add phosphorus, so they buy phosphate, most of which comes from Florida. Fertilizer is the largest input cost for most farmers. In 2024, the U.S. Department of Agriculture estimated that 22% of total corn production costs came from fertilizers, including labor, machinery, and overhead. Earlier this year, potash prices rose from $33 per ton to $348 due to U.S.-Canada tariffs. At the same time, fuel shortages in states like Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas have caused operating costs to skyrocket. Emergency declarations were issued for Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas due to the fuel shortage, leading to inflated prices for tractors, plows, and food transport vehicles, putting tremendous pressure on farmers. Farmers are stuck in a trap with no way out. Input costs, fertilizer, fuel, seeds are controlled by big corporations and domestic policies and are continuously rising. Meanwhile, commodity prices are determined by the global market and are showing signs of decline. They're stuck buying high, selling low in their own industry. While American farmers are caught between escalating trade wars and drastic cuts to agricultural budgets, Trump continues to offer mild promises of adjustment time, with farmers expected to suffer a little longer. Now, the remaining trust and capital of farmers have run out as major export markets dwindle, and U.S. agricultural products are slapped with sky-high prices due to tariff wars. This has led many farmers to be crushed by losses with no choice but to declare bankruptcy. Reports from DTN Progressive Farmers show that farmland prices remain high, which is the only way out for some farmers. Many have had to sell their land to pay off debts or invest in more promising industries. As a result, fields are left abandoned, farms are deliberately burned to stem losses, and American farmers leave the land, taking with them the collapse of an entire rural ecosystem. Here's a harsh truth. Since 2000, the total land area of U.S. farms has decreased annually, except for a small increase in 2012. According to statistics, the total agricultural land area has dropped by more than 66 million acres, and by 2024, only 876.5 million acres of farmland remained. This crisis is becoming more evident with the 2025 wheat decline, showing it clearly. The USDA has forecast that in 2025, farmers will plant less wheat and switch to more profitable crops like corn, and that grim prediction is now a reality. According to Farm Progress, spring wheat acreage in 2025 has fallen to just 9.4 million acres, the lowest level in more than 50 years since 1970. States once considered the Grain Belt, like North Dakota, Kansas, and Montana, are reporting double-digit declines in production. Farmers are no longer interested in wheat because planting it is now a losing gamble. The direct consequences are felt in every household. When you, a regular consumer, go shopping and see the prices of bread and cereal spike, chains like Kroger and Safeway are reporting price hikes ranging from 20 to 40%, or have started shrinking packaging sizes to quietly deal with the supply shortage. For the same price, you're getting less. It feels like you're getting robbed legally. The biggest sting comes when you pick up a loaf of bread and check the label. More and more loaves are coming from Canada because their prices are more reasonable than domestic products. The Made in America pride on the dinner table, once a given in a country that was the world's third largest agricultural producer, is now replaced by a harsh reality. We have to depend on Canadian wheat. That's a big question the people are asking their government. Can their country still take care of its own agriculture? While U.S. agriculture sinks into crisis, a completely different story is unfolding at the northern border. In the Great Plains region of the United States, where spring wheat once dominated the fields, farmers are turning their backs on the crop. But just across the border in Canada, the struggles and prospects of U.S.-China tariffs on canola oil have spurred farmers to ramp up wheat production. China's 100% tariffs on Canadian canola oil and the threat of tariffs on canola seeds amid President Trump's broader trade war have rattled Canadian farmers who have nearly quadrupled their canola acreage since 1990, before cutting back in recent years due to increasing droughts, high production costs, and crop diseases. Now, tariffs are expected to accelerate the potential for thousands of farmers to cut back further by hundreds of thousands or even millions of acres less canola, according to farmers and analysts, and they've turned to growing spring wheat. Instead of dumping their grain into the volatile commodity market, they're going straight to U.S. food giants, bakeries, pasta plants, fast food chains with an offer they can't refuse. Your system is in chaos. Your supply is uncertain. Sign long-term contracts with us. We guarantee you a steady, high-quality supply uninterrupted. For a U.S. business desperate for supply, it's a lifeline.